Hello everyone, my name is Tim, this is the Silver Pascal Coder, and in today's video we're going to be looking at variable types, and perhaps a topic I have been trying to avoid, perhaps because it might be too simplistic. You won't watch it or whatever, so that's what's been going in my head. But it is also fundamental, in the building blocks, of storing data in Pascal, in modern Pascal. So we're going to be looking at the simple types of Booleans, integers, floating point numbers, and characters only in this video. In another one, we'll look at strings and pointers, etc. And these simple types are the fundamental building blocks, used for storing data, whether it's to store some input from the user or to retrieving a value from somewhere that gets presented to the user as output. So what we're going to be looking at here is these different variable types, with an example and then a declaration, and then a bit further on we will then look at the how much space do these variables contain and why this information might be useful. So the first one we're going to look at are Booleans. So essentially a Boolean values are yes or no type values, 1 or 0, true or false, and they're used to answer simple questions. Now a simple question might have multiple parts to it, but each of those are made up of an individual question, and it might be something like, do you like ice cream? And if you say yes, well, that would be similar or the same as indicating true, and if you said no, I don't, well, that would be false. So as far as a declaration for a Boolean is concerned, it would look like this here, where we would have, in this case here, the variable name is b, colon, and then its type is Boolean. At the moment, that would be, the value would be, as far as I am concerned, unknown. And if you had a begin statement, you could do something like b equals true here. Or, the other one would be false here. The second basic type that you will come across are integers. And think of integers are going to be numbers that you might use to keep count of things, to keep track of things. And an example here might be if I've got a number of cars, toy cars, if I've got 4 of them, well, that would be a number. I don't have a half a car or a quarter of a car, I just have a whole car. And if I were to give you one of the cars, then I will have, let's say, if I had 4 cars, I now have 3. I'm not going to break one in half and give it to you. You either get a whole car or none. So if I give you a car, then basically that is similar to that is an integer. So declaration wise, now there are some subtypes of integers, like whether it's a word or a short integer, etc. We'll come up to that in a little tiny bit, but in general you can think of an integer as looking like this. So we have an I variable named I, and then again we use the colon to separate the name from the type. The type comes after the colon, and we're calling it an integer here before we can assign it a value. It is a whole number. I cannot do something like that where I'm trying to assign a floating point number to an integer. in fact, the compiler will complain to me about that. So we're talking about whole numbers only. If we did want to have, let's just say, something like 1.5 or maybe a half, then we have to look at floating point numbers. So, imagine you're having a pizza and you eat half of it. Well, that's half of the pizza, 0.5. And you'd have, one half has been eaten, half is left, 0.5. So that is a floating point number. Another example of a floating point number would be 3.14 pi. So here we're going to declare we're going to put a declaration in here for a double in this instance here, and so in this case here, for instance, we're talking about, we've eaten half of our pizza here, so, we're going to store 0.5 in a variable called d, and the type of d is a double. Unfortunately, I can't really think of any good examples for what a character might be, but, think of any of the characters on your keyboard, any individual ones of them. And when, so that's all I'm really going to say. Well, actually, what I will show, the variable declaration will look like this here, typically. And I might have something like C equals Y, for yes, when we've got single quotes there. Now, if we have, now these variables, by the way, when there is part of a function or procedures, then they will be stored, let's say here we've got an I, these will get stored on the stack, and each of these variables then also have a particular size. Does it take 1 byte, 2 bytes, or 4 bytes, or 8 bytes? Now that is something which we're going to be looking at in a moment. I think the main difference, let's say, between variables in Delphi versus Free Pascal is that in Delphi you can declare variables when I'm going to say inline, whereas in Free Pascal they have to go in that block, before the begin and after, obviously, the procedure line. So for example, if we were to, well, we've got an example here really. So here we've got a procedure and I have a variable declared inside the begin block, so this would be declared inline, and the code you see here won't work in Free Pascal. In Free Pascal then you would have to put the declaration outside of the begin, between the procedure and the begin, and then you can, before you initialize it and do something with that. So I asked the question, and we've been hinting at it throughout this video, why does the size matter? Well, it matters when you want to, or trying to interface something from, let's say, another language like C into your Pascal program, and you have to write the interface yourself. And when you come across a type, let's say in that other system, which is, let's say, a 4-byte integer or a unsigned int or whatever the type might be, what is the corresponding type going to be in Delphi or Pascal? So the other thing, by the way, which before I go on too far, is that I want to show you here I've got an inline variable demo function here, and you can see here that we've declared the variable, set a value, and assigned the value. Cool. But notice how I've got it within a begin and end block of its own. So if I were to try to move that line there outside of the that begin end, you can see that's gone out of scope. And in actual fact, the compiler tells me that here the variable is not declared, or undeclared. So uh, whether you are in favor or not in favor of inline variables, this particular example can show you the one of the positives, in that it does protect the user from accessing of variables in the wrong space, shall we say. So we'll just get rid of that error here, and we'll put that back there. What we have is a function that, as far as integers are concerned, we're going to output how big each of these variable types are. Then we're also going to output the range. For floating point numbers, we're just going to print the amount of bytes they take up. And then similarly for character types, and then for Boolean types here. Now you'll note here that above I was only mentioning integers or floating point numbers or something, and you would think, well, they're the only three types there are. Yes, but within the range of integers, you've got, let's say, a small int, you've got a short int, you've got a long int, you've got a word, cardinal, etc. You've got an int64, an unsigned int64, as well as a byte. When it comes to floating point numbers, we've got a real 48, a single, double, extended, a comp, and a currency field. Character types, we've got a wide char, a regular char, and an ANSI char, and I believe that let's say a char will default to a unichar or a wide char now, unless you use an option to change that. With a Boolean, then you've got a word Boolean, a long Boolean, a byte Boolean, a regular Boolean, as well. So enough confusion for everyone, but let's run this program. And you can see here, as an example, that the range of a the size of a short int is 1, and the range is -128 to 127. Whereas a small int is 2 bytes, and so that's like 16 bits, and its range is -32,000 to +32,000. So let's just compare that to what might be on this page up here. Fingers crossed, drum roll. None of those ones. So here we go. The short int is -128 to +127. Tick there. You can also see that it is a signed 8-bit, and it has an alias of an int8 as well. So like I said, if you are looking at if in another language, you can see, let's say, an unsigned int16. Well, you can see that's going to be a word in Pascal. So as far as getting, outputting the range and how much space was occupied, I'm using the size of function, and then to output the range, I am using the low of the type and the high of the type here that I'm using, and then it will output the corresponding values. If you want to know, and like I said, and the program here does the same thing for then the floating point numbers, or the character types, and then the Boolean types. As far as the ranges are concerned for the floating point numbers, the best place to look will be in the math unit, at least in Delphi, where you can see what the smallest number of, let's say, a single might be, and the largest value. And similarly for extended types, doubles, and so on. And like I said, these are not output. And again, in order to see how much space is taken up, by these variables here, we use the size of function, and then we use the invariable read line at the bottom so that the window remains open until you want to press the button. So, and finally, you can see that a byte then has the size of a byte is 1 byte, and its range is 0 to 255. So again, if you are trying to write an interface for another system, then this sort of information here is very useful, handy to know to determine what Pascal type will be the equivalent of the corresponding type in the other language. So because if you needed to, let's say, store, let's go for the length of a phone call. Well, you wouldn't use a short int because, first of all, the length of a phone call is not going to be less than 0. It's more than likely going to be longer than 127, let's say, seconds. So again, knowing the information that you want to store in a particular variable can help you to determine what variable type to use then. So that's about it for this video. The this file here will get uploaded to GitHub, and I hope you got something out of this video. And if you do like it, please subscribe and let your friends know. Hit that notification button so you can keep up to date with what's happening on this channel. And until next time, happy programming, and I'll see you then. Bye.